The Punisher was a Netflix original TV show that was the sixth installment in the Netflix Marvel Cinematic Universe. After exacting revenge on those responsible for the death of his wife and children, Frank Castle uncovers a conspiracy that runs far deeper than New York's criminal underworld. If you saw my review for Season 2, you will know how much I love the portrayal of the Punisher in that series of Daredevil, and I thought Jon Bernthal was absolutely incredible as a character. And when I heard at the time that he was going to get his own spin-off show, I was hyped. I was hyped with the trailers. They looked awesome, and it was a phase in time of Marvel where constantly they were giving good stuff. Even the Netflix shows, like I loved the first few seasons of the Netflix Marvel installments, like Daredevil Season 1 and 2, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage in their first seasons. Then Iron Fist came out and it was a mixed bag. Defenders was even kind of a mixed bag for some people, even though I really enjoyed it at the time. So we were unsure as to how Season 1 of The Punisher is going to be. Is it going to fall into the good stuff like the Daredevil series and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage? Or is it going to be Iron Fist or is it going to be the Defenders, where it's like in the middle? I think for the generalized audience and how they thought, they were leaning towards it's somewhere in the middle. Like, I see a huge section of the audience really digging the show, and another section that prefers like one season to the other. And it's like one of those shows that like whichever season you watch is going to be your preferred version of the character Punisher. Like, I know some people that prefer Season 1 over Season 2, and some people that prefer Season 2 over Season 1. But I'm going to review Season 1 only and give you my own generalized thoughts and opinions here. So, with me already stating all of that, I think Punisher Season 1 is a great season for the Punisher. And the reason why I say this is because I think in terms of the momentum compared to other seasons of the Netflix shows around this time, it held my attention the most. The characterization of the Punisher is the most interesting out of almost everyone from the old Netflix shows. I mean, I found characters like Kingpin, Bullseye, and Daredevil a bit more interesting, but Punisher is still up there, and he's still technically a Daredevil character, so he's around that same ballpark. Anything related to the Daredevil stuff is like top tier. However, that doesn't mean that this show isn't perfect like the Daredevil show, or at least almost perfect. I do think that there are a few drawbacks here, and I'll get to those later. But to start off with my positives, Frank Castle, portrayed by Jon Bernthal, just absolutely nailing the role like always. He gives a lot of emotional depth, raw intensity to his emotions, his actions, and pure dedication to the stunts and action choreography whenever he has to get his hands dirty against some criminals or some gang members or some high CIA or FBI government officials that he has to take down. There's this one cool forest scene that reminds me a whole lot of Rambo, where he's just taking out all these guys in the woods, and it is just incredible to watch. Jon Bernthal just absolutely nails the role here. However, something that I don't like about the Punisher here is how this season attempts to make the murder of his wife and children a bit more personal. Like, they try to tie in Billy Russo, who eventually becomes Jigsaw in the comics here, as a best friend or a former best friend for the Punisher here, who worked with him in combat and out when he was serving. And they try to make his backstory that revolves around their boss at the time, who is kind of one of the main villains here now, that's trying to hunt down Frank Castle. And they try to connect all these dots together with his family's death, And I think what I really enjoyed about Frank Castle is that it isn't the person who killed his family that made him go after revenge. It's the overall just actions of criminals in general that caused the death of his family and almost himself, which then leads him to want to go up against every criminal, even if, no matter if they were like a personal attack to him or not. He thinks that any sort of criminal or anyone who does any sort of sin deserves no life at all. And so a good chunk of this season involves him and another character named Micro searching for the truth behind this CIA operation and how corrupt it is. And it doesn't always mesh well. It doesn't feel that engaging as Frank Castle trying to hunt down a bunch of criminals that are going after someone or doing some wrong thing, and he's trying to do his best to try and save that one person from that criminal organization, which is something that I think season 2 learned from this season and did a much better job at, and is why in terms of characterization of the Punisher, I prefer the second season over this. But that doesn't mean that the overall character of the Punisher here was assassinated. They still have the traits of his violent nature here, his empathy towards the innocent, and him trying to reconnect with others, trying to make some friends if he can, and maybe form a family, even though he knows deep down that he can never have that again, is really engaging to watch, and is what, for the most part, saved this character of the Punisher here. And yes, I know I prefer like the second season characterization over this, but still overall, this is pretty good characterization, even if I do prefer other versions over this. But with other traits of the character still being intact, and Jon Bernthal giving a magnetic performance here, it saved the show and the character of the Punisher for me, and for the most part helped me enjoy the show a lot more. And as I said, the action is gritty, brutal, bare-handed, hard-knuckled, and just bloody, gruesome. It holds no strings attached. It doesn't hold anything back, and it is like unapologetically violent, and that is what I want from the Punisher. And the way this whole series was able to wrap up with him being able to finally accept that role that he has now become, I really enjoyed. I really like how the whole series was able to tie up his character in the first place. As for other characters like Billy Russo as a Jigsaw, I do like his backstory as well. I like how his friendship formed with Frank Castle and how it slowly deteriorated, and how we see these characters hate each other and going after each other's necks, but also at times knowing that there's this other guy that they hate even more, and it forces them to briefly conspire together to try and take him out. And it leads to one of my favorite and most satisfying villain deaths I've seen in any of these Netflix adaptations of these Marvel characters. Is just this whole, I don't want to spoil what happens here, but it is a really impactful scene, and just how it was able to portray Frank Castle's whole character and who he is at this point. Just absolutely brilliant stuff here. And I also like the fact that Frank Castle is getting along with Micro's family, the people that he promises he will protect, and in some ways is forming again that fatherly connection that he wanted to have with his own family, and that creates a bit of friction between Micro and Frank Castle, even though they're trying to take down the same organization. When it comes to this personal matter now, we understand both sides and why they are at each other's throats about this, and you really don't blame each and any one of them. Micro just wants to see his family once again and protect them, while Frank is someone who wants a family and wants some sort of real connection deep down. And so him knowing that he's not able to really get that, but he's still doing his best to try and protect those who he deems innocent. Just, I really like all that stuff, that conflict within Frank Castle. Again, how this show portrays Frank is great, but there are some pacing issues again. Some of these things can drag a bit, especially with this detective character who gets a lot better as the season goes on, who's trying to look for Frank Castle and try to uncover this conspiracy herself with the CIA. Just, it's not as interesting as Frank Castle, Micro, and Billy Russo. I feel like her character kind of dragged down the story a bit, and there are times in the middle chunk of the season where the pacing can drag a bit because of that. And I don't know, she wasn't bad. The acting was good, the actress does a good job, and her character does get a lot better and more integral to the plot as the story unfolds, and her connection with Frank Castle grows as the show goes on. Just overall, I think in the middle chunk, she just felt like a filler character at times, and I just want to go back to Frank Castle and Billy Russo and Micro doing their own thing. So overall, I really enjoyed this season of The Punisher. And while I don't love it as much as I did when I first saw it, I still think there's still a lot of good things that this show has going for you to enjoy as a fan of The Punisher. And if you enjoy these Netflix shows, this one is definitely a must watch for you. And for that reason, I'm going to give season 1 of The Punisher an A-. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you guys next time.